preparation in languages can be translated into all kinds of career directions. David Turnbull is a career diplomat with the United States Department of State. Since 2006, he has served as the Malaysian desk officer in Washington, and as an executive and political officer at the U.S. mission to NATO in Brussels, Belgium, a consular and refugee officer in Yemen, and in the Bureau of European and Eurasian Affairs. David is currently preparing for his next assignment as the Cultural Affairs Officer in Ho Chi Minh City this summer. David earned his master's degree from the George Washington University Elliott School in International Affairs in 2007, where he studied conflict and conflict resolution in the Middle East. He graduated from the University at Buffalo in 2005 with a bachelor's degree in French, Spanish, and International Studies. At UB, David was a member of the Honors College Advanced Honors Program and founded UB's chapter of Phi Sigma Iota, a languages honor society. David has studied abroad in France, Spain, South Africa, Cyprus, and Egypt. Depending on the angle of the sun, he can speak varying degrees of French, Spanish, Hebrew, Arabic, Vietnamese, Italian, and Russian. He hails from Binghamton, New York, and can be caught writing, practicing Aikido, snowboarding, surfing, making hot sauce, and rooting for the Buffalo Bills in his spare time. And he will soon be married to Miss Ann Eisenhower before moving to Vietnam. She's our honored guest here today as well. Please join me in welcoming David Turnbull.
Thank you, Dr. Scarlett, and good morning, UB. I'm sure many of you, if you're like me, may be wishing the ceremony was a little later in the day. I can still remember a few Thursday nights in Buffalo. First, congratulations. You've done more than just learn the subjunctive, but you've really made a meaningful achievement in graduating today. I'd just like to take a quick moment to thank Dr. Scarlett again for inviting me here today, and the entire Romance Languages and Literatures Department, and all friends and family who traveled far and wide to be here today with you all. And a big thanks especially to some of my former professors, some of whom are here today, Dr. Ludwig, Dr. Reed, Dr. Earlham, and Dr. Welsh. I'm more grateful than you all know for all of your time, insights, and guidance. And a special thanks to my dad and stepmom and fiance who all made the trip up here today. UB is truly a special place. I had opportunities here that I never dreamed of in high school. I traveled far and wide, I learned 2 new languages, I began to figure out my place in the world. Over the last decade, I've used not only the language skills I acquired at UB, but the life skills here to do some pretty amazing things. Now, as much as I'd love to stand up here and regale you with my greatness, I'd much rather try to distill a few small life lessons you can use to turn verb conjugation and poetry reading in 18th century literature into a skill set that will open doors for you in your careers. So I have F's for you. Focus on your goals, harness your fears, and be flexible. The good news is that most of you have probably done all of these things to make it here today. You understand the value of a second or third language. You understand what it means to think in a new framework, to adapt to a culture that isn't your own. And unless you're a native speaker, you're harnessing all 3 of these abilities every time you open your mouth in another language. Cada vez que abre la boca, chaque fois que vous ouvrez la bouche, ogni volta que apre la boca. Speaking in a foreign language is scary. It requires linguistic flexibility and demands your focus. And so it is with life and with your careers. So let's talk a minute about focus. I still have my Petit Robert and my very large Spanish and French dictionaries. There's really no good reason to keep them. They sit on my overcrowded bookshelf, they take up space, collect dust, are very easily replaced by an app. But they remind me of my freshman year in Roosevelt Hall, sitting at a bleak table outside my dorm, double and triple checking words in stories and plays that were way above my head as a freshman. They remind me of the endless hours trying to play catch up with the kids who just came back from a semester abroad. They remind me of my focus. They remind me of every time I told my friends I was too busy studying to go off and do something fun. I didn't have to major in 2 languages here. My mother, God rest her soul, wanted me to major in business. But I knew my passion. I knew what I wanted, not because I thought I was good at languages, not because I thought learning French or Spanish were so important in life, but because I knew it would open doors for me down the road. I knew it would open possibilities on 2, if not 3 continents. I knew my home wouldn't be here in upstate New York, and maybe not even in any one particular place. And maybe some of you know that too. Focus is ultimately what got me the job in the Foreign Service, my only job goal since high school, which, by the way, is not a great overall life strategy, but more on that later. When I got to grad school, I really began to hone in on the Middle East as a region in which I wanted to study and work. I had studied Hebrew as a child and a bit at UB, and of course French, and I naively hoped this would qualify me to start thinking about the region. But I quickly realized that without Arabic, it was all futile. So I found private Arabic teachers, institutes, and tutors, and learned what little I could of the language on the sideline of my 2 years of grad school. By the time I finished my master's, I was halfway through the process of becoming a foreign service officer, all but accepted. Unfortunately, my candidacy had an expiration date, and without passing a language exam in a critical needs language like Arabic, I was very unlikely to get the job. So having just received my MA, having only one job prospect, remember, not a great strategy, and student loan repayments about to kick in, I had a choice: to find a real job and hope against hope that the State Department thing would pan out, or I could go for broke and spend every last dime I had trying to learn enough Arabic to pass a 30-minute phone test. So I packed my bags for Egypt. After 2 long flights, I found myself at a questionable institute on the outskirts of Cairo, not the shiny, nice American university where all of my peers had studied, surrounded by Chechens and Indonesians and Pakistanis. It was a little less than ideal. But I took my entrance exam and thought I knew a little bit of Arabic after a couple of years, and they sent me to the beginner class, and they said, go relearn the alphabet. It was embarrassing, but after being called out in a French grammar class for mispronouncing the letter U, after 10 years of French, I could stomach a few Arabic tongue twisters and rote repetition of endless ta, da, tha sounds. But to be safe, I also found a tutor who was willing to give me more challenging work. I spent time talking to hookahwallas and cab drivers and tour guides. It was Egypt after all, and I did whatever I could to improve. After 2 months of an Egyptian summer, I had sweated through all my clothes, and it was time to return back to Washington, D.C. for my exam. When I came home to Washington, I immediately fell ill. With no hope of rescheduling my exam, I had to bear it with 101-degree fever, 3 months of intensive Arabic, and almost no money and no job to speak of, so no pressure. But as fate would have it, I quickly found out that my examiner used to live in Buffalo. No shit. I spent 5 minutes of my exam lamenting the trials of the Buffalo Bills in Arabic. It wasn't flawless. Heck, I was riding a Dayquil train, but it was the only time I was ever grateful we had Rob Johnson as a quarterback. 4 months later, I began my first day of training as a diplomat, and I haven't looked back since. But boy, have I been afraid. Fear has been an integral part of not only my career, but my experience with foreign languages as a whole. My entire life, I've been told I have a gift for learning languages. The truth is, it's just something I like to do, and I'm better than average at memorizing vocab. The truth is that every time I open my mouth to talk to a native speaker in any language, I'm scared. I'm scared I'm going to misconjugate a verb or forget a preposition. I'm scared I'll mispronounce a word and accidentally insult someone's mother. And this fear is not misplaced. These things have all happened more than I care to admit. In Arabic, there's a saying that every word has 3 meanings: what it means, its opposite, and some type of camel. In Vietnamese, I learn a new word every week that when mispronounced refers to some kind of genital. In French, I can remember at least a few times when I accidentally asked about the préservatif in the food, forgetting, of course, that food does not contain condoms. So language can be scary. And it's not just about mispronouncing words, it's about being unfamiliar in a new context. At UB, I had opportunities to study abroad, to use my languages in the field, and also to volunteer here in Buffalo at a local refugee shelter and at a bilingual school. I held an internship during my study abroad in France, where I worked at an international NGO to help new immigrants and even help translate documents from Spanish to French. My time at Vive la Casa, the Armand Berrio Academy, and Secours Populaire Français allowed me to learn how to put my language skills to use in the real world. This was the preparation I needed to succeed in my job down the road. Every time I stepped into one of these jobs, I knew there were people who were counting on me to get things right, to listen, to understand, and to help. So to excel, you have to manage your fear. You have to accept that you're going to make mistakes and learn from them. You have to swallow your pride and keep going. There's no better lesson for life. And just as I started my career with State, I got an even heavier dose of managing my fears. 17 days into my first assignment with the Foreign Service, our embassy in Sana'a, Yemen was attacked by 6 suicide bombers and 2 car bombs. 19 people died that morning, including one of our guards and a young girl from just down the road in Lackawanna. This was my introduction to the Foreign Service. After the attack, I had a choice. I could stay in Yemen, or I could take an optional evacuation. I was less than 3 weeks into my dream job, and I was petrified. In the end, though, my decision was simple. I really couldn't have looked myself in the mirror had I left. I came out there to do my job, and for as long as they let me, I was going to keep doing it. For 2 years, I drove 30 minutes each way to work thinking that I might never make it home. Think about that, for 2 years. I spent at least an hour a day knowing there was a better than average chance I could be kidnapped, shot, or blown up. And I kept doing it. One of my favorite quotes, one that kept me going, was from the original True Grit by John Wayne, where he says, "Courage is being scared to death, but saddling up anyways." That became a mantra for me, and for better or for worse, I finished my tour. These are the places we need diplomats, the places that are difficult and meaningful for our national security. I was proud to be a part of that mission, and frankly, compared to my commute, speaking in Arabic with scores of visa applicants was a breeze, even if I accidentally may have called a few people's mothers camels. So what did staying in Yemen get me? Well, a few things. I stayed on the visa line and kept interviewing people that were trying to immigrate and visit America, and I can tell you that I kept more than a few dangerous people out of our country. I also helped more than a few families unite here in America. We helped rescue kidnapped children, issue birth certificates to Americans, and got some stranded and confused visitors home safely. I got to work on refugee issues and help some camps that were in desperate need of U.S. assistance. I set up a volunteer program to help a local orphanage in Sana'a. Most of these are small things, but together I'm proud of the impact I made. So my advice is learn to harness your fear. It's okay to be scared. But if you're going to succeed, you can't let your fear control your decisions. Ask a stranger for directions, raise your hand in class, make a dinner reservation, do whatever you can in your foreign language. One of my biggest accomplishments was this week making a hair appointment in Vietnamese. It's really the little things. Don't be afraid to go to the difficult places this world has to offer. You can really accomplish great things. Finally, the final and maybe most important F I want to talk about is flexibility. For any of us who have studied a foreign language, this is absolutely paramount. I remember learning the word circumlocution from my 10th grade Spanish teacher. Circumlocution is essential in any language in which you're not perfectly fluent. Simply put, it means finding a way around a word you don't know. When you're just learning, it might mean saying, I have to go get money, instead of saying, I need to find a bank. Or later on, it might mean saying the dangerous interaction between destructive materials and a bomb when trying to describe nuclear fission. No matter the level you are at with the language, you need to circumlocute to survive. And although it's something you learn out of necessity in the classroom, it becomes something even more essential in the work environment. For me, flexibility has always been difficult. Just ask my fiance. When I speak, I want to be precise. It's not enough for me to say I had a great sandwich for lunch. I want to be able to describe each individual ingredient, or at least be able to ask for some hot sauce. But language, like life, doesn't always come out the way you want it to. I entered the State Department thinking I'd be a Middle East specialist. After all, I had this really tough tour in Yemen. I spent all this time learning Arabic. And even in my second assignment at the U.S. missions in NATO and Brussels, I focused on NATO-Middle East relations. I assisted our ambassador through the military campaign in Libya. I established NATO's formal partnership with Iraq after the war, and I was a one-man monitoring team at the start of the conflict in Syria. But as fate would have it, my next job offer was to work on Malaysia, a country I had visited once, but had little familiarity with. Happy to be returning to the States after 4 years away, I took the job and hoped for the best. What I finally learned firsthand was that the conventional wisdom about my job, and perhaps any job, is true. That the places you go and the job you hold matter much less than the people with whom you work. I was blessed to have an amazing office with amazing people, and maybe U.S.-Malaysia relations wasn't my area of expertise, but I did my job better because I worked with great people. Today we have a comprehensive partnership with Malaysia, and Malaysia has signed up to join the Trans-Pacific Partnership, a major free trade agreement. These things matter, and as the only desk officer working exclusively on the bilateral relationship, I know my efforts were key in these developments. Even more important to my career, though, were the relationships I was able to build during my time working at our East Asia and Pacific Affairs Bureau. Had I not been open to learning about a new region, committing to our policies, and being a team player, I would not have had anywhere near the amount of opportunities, not only to contribute meaningfully to our foreign policy, but also to find a job which made me truly happy. So again, after a few years, when it came time to switch jobs, which is both a perk and a challenge of the Foreign Service, I looked to those I'd worked with along the way. They helped me find a truly enviable position as a cultural affairs officer in Ho Chi Minh City. And although I never imagined serving in Southeast Asia, I have found that one path leads to another as long as you're open to it. And honestly, I'm happier now doing work I never imagined doing than I have been in my 10 years of government service. Plus, I'm actually getting paid to learn a language. Sure, I never imagined that language would be Vietnamese, but I'm more excited than ever to get started in Ho Chi Minh City in August. So the final point is simple. Learn to adapt, be flexible, and you might just find success where you never expected it. Language is a gift. It helps us to understand how to build bridges with other people. It's something we should feel privileged to study, because the relationships and opportunities you can create with language are truly unique. You have the skill set. You learned it here at UB. I know the faculty here. I know the quality of the education. Whether you studied Italian poetry, French grammar, Spanish literature, or anything in between, you've learned to focus, to use your fear, and to be flexible. Your teachers have corrected your pronunciation, especially if you have Dr. Ludwig. They've given you insights and a path to understand different parts of the world and its peoples. Wherever you go, whatever you do, remember them and remember your school. Stay involved as alumni and give back when you can. And just this final word of encouragement, use your language skills to serve. Serve your communities by teaching. Serve other communities through work with nonprofits, or serve your country. The world needs people who can build bridges and who can relate to one another. And even though the distance between us is shrinking every day with the advent of new technologies, there is yet to be a substitute for people-to-people communication. You have a lot to be proud of this week. Congratulations, felicitaciones, complimente dottore, parabéns, felicitare, mabruk, mazel tov, pozdravляю, sinchuk mo. Thank you.